listening to Second Wind with Joyce Buford, where women who are ready to expand their life adventure discover the tools to stop playing small and tap into the courage required to enjoy their second wind. Welcome.
Welcome to Second Wind. You know, this podcast was created especially for you. It is my passion, as our guest today, Tracie Root, is also very passionate about this. We want you all to have the best opportunity of making the most out of your life. And it's very important to us. And so we want you to be inspired by what Tracie shares here today, to dream big. I mean, big, you know, really outside of your comfort zone. And I want to inform you about how to get into your second wind and have that experience that's going to last for the rest of your life. Now, Tracie is just one of the awesome people that I have on this podcast. And the benefit of having them here is that they share their stories so that maybe your journey might be less stressful, might be full of stories and hiccups and tips that will give you a smoother journey. You know, the journey is all about the connections and the supportive community that you have. So I am thrilled that you're here with us today to hear Tracie share her wisdom with you. Now, let me tell you about Tracie. Tracie Root is a coach, a speaker, an educator, and a community builder. Tracie helps women remember their best selves. For a decade, she has been serving and supporting clients around the country to set and to get their goals in health, life, in business, and business. With the founding of Gather, which I believe is her community, in 2019, she has experienced expansion in 2020, and she took her own goal-setting advice and created a community of like-minded women who are growing and thriving together. Tracie serves women around the U.S. in her group programs and in the Gather community to expand their thoughts and dreams to live their boldest life. Now, Tracie lives in Santa Cruz, California, and is married to her best friend, Tracie. I love that. And they are raising two teens, bless you, and a dog. Oh, we love our dogs. So welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I think that even though we've never met in person and have just kind of connected briefly, there's something about what we have in common in our thought processes and our beliefs that is just so aligned. So I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, thanks. You know, we all have those moments in our lives that really, I call them defining moments, but they're moments of, and we have many of them, but some of them are bigger and bulkier and heavier and stronger and life-changing. So I'd like, if you would, share your defining moment that really took you from corporate world to your present path.
Yeah. Well, it's a big one. My husband died, right? My husband died. I mean, there's like nothing bigger than that. And I'll tell you a little bit of the like before, during, and after. I am here in Santa Cruz, and I grew up in Silicon Valley, Cupertino, San Jose, home of Apple Computer, that whole area.
Yeah.
And I, from a young age, was like a super high achiever, really, you know, make sure you get good grades, get a good job, go to college, all those things. And when I was around 21, I met a man who was opposite of me. He was a dreamer. He didn't finish college. He was very like, kind of went with the flow in a lot of ways, which was fascinating and very, very romantic to me because I was very, goal driven. And so that it's funny. I never really thought about that, but that's totally true, that we were two peas in a pod, but like I was on one side of the pod and he was on the other side of the pod. We were definitely, we complemented each other very well because we were very different. Mm. And we were together for about 13 years before we got married. So I was in my early 30s. He was in his late 30s. And had a long time to get to know each other and live together. We bought a house together and all that. And we decided we were going to start a family. Mm. So he grew up Catholic. We're like, well, we better get married if we're going to have kids. And like, we haven't done anything else kind of as written as it's supposed to be. So we should do that. So we got married. I got pregnant. And right after our son was born, my husband was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, no.
Yes. So, and my mom had passed away 8 years prior to that with a similar symptom, right? A big lump in the throat. Oh. And he also had it in his throat. And I was just like, well, as long as you go to the doctor, as long as you don't come home with cancer, it'll all be fine. And of course it was. So that was a really big defining moment right there. Yes. So he was diagnosed right after our son was born. 4 years of treatments, chemo, radiation, improvement, recurrence. We had our daughter in the middle of all that. And he fought for about 4 years before he passed away. The kids were 1.5 and 4.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's a pretty defining moment. Not immediately, because immediately after such an event, you don't really think very much. It's very, they call it widow brain, right? It's very foggy, right? You cannot really process a lot. And it's even the memory of it all is very fuzzy to me. Like there's a lot that I don't remember. Yeah. But about 1.5 years later, I started kind of coming out of that fog. And I realized that I was exhausted. We had been living in survival mode for so long. Yes. The kids were like 3 and 5, 6, something like that. And I knew that I kind of looked at our life and said, if this is not the life that I want for them, this is certainly not anything that's very enjoyable for me. I was working full time. I was in that corporate field for 17 years. I was very good at my job. So it was very kind of autopilot. And so there wasn't anything interesting going on. And I knew that if I didn't change something, and I didn't know exactly what, but if I didn't change something, that nothing was going to change. I was going to be in this job. That was fine. I was going to be exhausted every day coming home, and the kids were going to start growing up. Yeah. And we weren't connecting on a regular basis. Yes. It was like, get home, dinner, bedtime, self-medicate with wine and junk food, and start the next day all over again.
Did you have any support during?
I didn't really have much local support. I had a couple of close friends, one of whom I'm now married to. And that's later in the story. But my family, my parents lived in Florida.
Oh, wow.
And so, while he was sick, I had lots of support, which was fabulous, right? His family would come out and visit. My family would come out, be with the grandkids, be with the, nieces and nephews. He was, like I said, he was a part of a large Catholic family out of New Orleans. And so I had a lot of support while he was sick. But, after he was gone, everyone else, and this is a typical widow story, everyone else goes back to their regular lives.
Of course.
And you're left kind of holding the bag of this grief process. So, and I hadn't ever been the girl to look for help, right? I was always very like, I'm fine. I don't need help. I didn't know how to ask for help. I definitely didn't know how to accept help. And so I just, went back to work and I did my thing, and I had friends there, but they were work friends, and yes, they supported me, but it was when it was crucial and not like a real support community like I have now. So I kind of said, if I'm going to do something, if life is going to be different, I'm going to need to do something different. And I decided I would just start with what I saw in the mirror every day, which was the fact that I had had 2 kids, had never lost a pound, and had always struggled with my weight since a teenager anyway. So I said,
Oh.
if I get to myself to feeling better about my health and my weight, then I would have more energy. I would have more confidence and enthusiasm for like being in this body.
Yes.
And so that's where I started. I found a program that was physician created and had a health coach. And I lost 55 pounds.
Whoa.
That summer, in 5 months, I lost 55 pounds. It was fabulous.
Wow. That's a lot.
And it was a lot. I needed to lose a lot. I went from like a size tight 16 to an 8. And I'd never lived in an 8 as an adult. It was fabulous.
Goodness. Yes.
Well,
yes.
yeah, I'd gotten there on like Atkins before, but that doesn't last either. So, so I felt amazing. People saw me kind of start to become, quote, the old me, right? Like I had energy, I had enthusiasm. I was, acting happier because I felt better.
Yeah. And
the fact that I had someone to support me through that process really started me opening my eyes to the fact that, other people supporting you matters, and making changes that support you matters, right? Whether they're physical changes or really the mindset changes was what really started to fascinate me around the choices that I made for myself with what I was eating and how I was living, but also the choices that I made around what I was doing just on a day-to-day basis in the relationship with my kids and in my work and what I wanted out of life.
Yeah. Did you have your best friend with you then too, to go through this?
We were always friends from the we met actually when we were 17, when I was 17, he's a little older. So we've been friends the whole time. So we're friends all through that marriage. He actually was the one who took me to the funeral home to make the decisions about the casket and all of that stuff, which again, it's all very fuzzy, but I remember like sitting there with him. I don't remember a lot of things around that time, but I remember being in that room going, I want that one, like those weird funeral decisions that most of are which very blurry. So yes, he was there, but again, he was a friend, and he's also an engineer. Like there's a lot about, the whole 2 peas, opposite peas. He was like the other kind of pea in the pod, right? Very, very much a helper and very willing to help. So yes, he was there.
Oh, I have one question. I've shared this before, and I found it in my life when 2 important people in my life died in January. I've never gone through grief, and I thought part of it was my ex-husband. And so I think what happened to me is I had delayed grief. So my thought for you is, because you did have to kick it back into gear to go on with life because you have these 2 precious children. Did you find that in your grief story that you had to put grief on a hold, or were you able to really feel the pain, the loss, the regrets, marriage lost?
I mean, obviously grief is a widely varied experience, and for everybody. And there's a lot of things that when we're talking about grief that come to mind for me. One is the fact that he had been sick for 4 years. That, true. A lot of our goodbyes happened in that last year. Yeah. It wasn't like a light switch, right? He'd been sick for a while. He, in fact, it's, every year, thank you, Facebook, every year I get the reminders in May of, oh, he's in the ICU. Oh, today he got out of the ICU and he's in the hospital. Oh, today he gets to come home.
Where are those reminders coming from?
In memories on Facebook.
Oh, Facebook. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Which, which actually is good in that, like I said, a lot of it's very blurry to me. Yes. I don't really have really clear memories, but it's so that, and in fact, just even this year, I was like, oh gosh, I forgot he was in the ICU because it's been 11 years now. Yes. And so actually I'm grateful that that's there because it helps me stay connected to that memory.
Yeah.
Because that was a very important time in what was
Sure.
happening. So, so back to your question about putting grief on hold. So I think that I had already been processing it,
Yes.
and knowing, you know, the experiences that I took with me from that point forward, right? Going back to work, being at work, and every time at lunchtime, I'd get a pang because every time at lunchtime, he used to call me.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
So, and driving to and from work. And basically I was talking to him and crying my eyes out the whole way to and from work, like every
Yes.
day for days. And then I'd talk to him and not be crying. And then eventually, you know, and that wears off. So there was, it was a process. I don't know that I necessarily put it on hold, because as I said, it was like a year and a half later when I finally
Yes,
really came
ongoing.
out. So there was some processing time there.
You're right.
But, you know, the other thing that I really know about grief from this experience and from losing my mom years before that, and truthfully, there's a lot of gifts related to this, because what's allowed me to do is understand that the loss of anything is a grief process.
Yes.
Right. I lost my
definitely.
mom, I lost my husband, but other people have divorces, lose parents, you know, other parents, children, like, oof, you know, that's so horrible. But even just, it comes down to grief is the loss of what was expected, right? We thought something was going to be a certain way,
Yes.
and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And there's that whole spectrum right there.
Yeah.
All the
Love
way
that,
to
Tracie.
a global pandemic, right? Now everyone in the world, and that blows your mind, right? Everyone in the world has had a shared traumatic grief experience.
Yes.
And it's different for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And how people think about it is different for everyone, as
Yeah.
we all know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different people are processing where we are in the world now or a year ago very differently, but it's all grief.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that those of us who can see that can process it more effectively, to realize that this is something that happened, and it's okay to feel grief around it. And we can therefore recognize when we are ready to move out of it and move forward again. And unfortunately, with things that are out of our control and long term, like this pandemic, you think you're ready to move forward again, and then something else happens and it refreshes itself. So, but again, just, I think that awareness and that understanding that no matter what happens to you, however you feel about it and however you process it is totally unique and not dissimilar at the same time to other people's. Which ties us together. And that's what builds supportive community. It also is what divides people, but it also can be what builds community between us, because for those who understand, you know, that they're not alone in their experience.
Yeah, it can, the grief, completing grief or moving through grief can also be the impetus for changing, going someplace new. I made decisions about my step forward, as you did. You, in your prime example of losing the weight and all of that. So,
well, and then the rest of that story, in just like a few sentences, is, you know, I lost that weight that summer. I learned about the idea of coaching people on a personal, you know, the only coaches I ever knew were sports coaches, but personal, you know, weight and health coaching, life coaching, like all of that started to come into my world, because I was working a lot of personal development for myself. And so that's when I started becoming a coach, right? My person helped me. So I started helping all the people around me who said, oh my gosh, what did you do? You lost 55 pounds in 5 months. Help me. So I helped them, and I learned over the course of probably the next few years how to take that from here, I'll help you as a friend and a coworker and a acquaintance, to really learning how to the coaching process. But I also took that potential as a business from a business standpoint, and left my corporate job later that same year and moved to Florida, to where I would have support. That's where my parents lived.
Oh,
So
yes.
I took the kids, left my corporate job, and we moved to Florida to where we would be able to have each other in support
Mhm.
of each other. My kids would have their grandparents, my grandparents would have their grandbabies.
Oh, I bet they love
And
that.
they did. Of course, as I already alluded to, I've gotten remarried. What happened was, as soon as we moved to Florida, my now husband and I kind of looked at each other as I was leaving and went, you're leaving. This is a problem. And so we did the long distance thing just for 6 months. And then we decided to move back to California.
Yes,
So my
yes.
parents were a little sad, but obviously happy for me and for us to change our relationship from, decades of friendship into something more. And we've been married almost 8 years.
I like this story.
Me too.
Yay. Yay. So, how was it changing from corporate into coaching?
Yeah.
One would kind of look at insurance, some of those other things, bugaboos that we have
Yeah.
in making a switch like that. It
Mhm.
really takes. Now, the benefit you have is that business mindset that you have, that I know you must be fabulous in helping your clients make these transition changes,
Mhm. Mhm.
but those are serious changes.
It is. And so I was in corporate for 17 years.
Yes.
And one of the giant benefits to how I was in corporate was I worked for a consulting firm. So
Oh.
we were a small company and we
Uh-huh.
worked for large companies. And so I got to see big and small
Yes.
business. I
Yes.
also got to work at a lot of different places and managed my schedule and billing hours and all of those kinds of things. So a lot of the things that were part of that career helped me a lot in working for myself, because I
Oh,
needed
yeah.
to understand it wasn't perfect, because I wasn't totally self-directed when I was a consultant, because I was a project manager. And so basically they hired me to run a project, and project has a frame around it and a
Mhm.
timeline and a budget and all that stuff.
Mhm.
So I had to take the skills and translate them into entrepreneurship,
Right.
which, it took a bit to
Mhm.
get there. In fact, I had a mentor at one point who was just like, I'm going to act like your boss. I'm going to tell you what to do for a little while, because you're struggling a little bit. And I was like, this is true. I am struggling. And on the one hand, that was helpful. And on the other hand, it didn't really help me move through what I was going through. But
Mhm.
it was, I really needed to learn how to put boundaries around my time.
Right.
Right. The way that I worked 10 years ago or 9 years ago when that happened versus now is like polarity difference, right? I
Mhm.
needed to learn how to put boundaries around my work time, how to stay focused, all those things. And these are things that I still work on today, that every entrepreneur works on, but fresh out of corporate, in a new state, in a new house, with new shiny objects all around me, walking my
Yeah.
kids to and from school every day. Like, there was a lot
Ah.
to manage. But the good thing too is, being on the East Coast, coming from California, being in Florida, the time change was great, because I was used to being in California. So once I put my kids to bed, I could work 3-4 more hours and people were still awake back in California. So I got a
Yes.
lot done in the late hours of the night. So that was actually helpful in that transition. But, I only did Florida for 8 months.
Mhm.
So moving back here to California again kind of shifted that perspective of how to spend my days, right? We moved into my husband's house that he had already had. We were doing
Yeah.
renovations. I had new networking and community to build and connect to. So it was definitely a long kind of transition. And I think after I was here for maybe 3 years, it finally kind of solidified. And that
Mhm.
was about 6 years or 5 or 6 years ago, when
Yeah.
things really kind of started to rock.
Yeah, that is for most people that become entrepreneurs go into this with their deepest desire to improve the environment, to
Mhm.
improve lives, to make a change, and yet they don't move with the structure
Mhm.
that you learned you have to have.
Right. I had to learn
And
it over time, really, because I probably took the leap sooner than I should, quote, should have, right?
uh,
I was so motivated to change my living situation, to get to Florida, to be with my family,
yeah,
to change the typical structure of our days, that I was so motivated to do that I didn't really have a lot of the things in place that we might recommend to someone who's looking to
right.
leave their corporate job now, right? We would recommend a certain amount of savings and, a whole exit plan and everything. And my exit plan basically took me 3-4 months
Yeah.
instead of really looking at, I mean, I looked at cost of living and all of those things, and that all made sense. You're right about like insurance and all of that. I mean, ridiculous. But again, I only did it for 8 months because then I moved back here and got married, and now was on my husband's insurance, and
Yes.
everything changed again. So,
Yeah.
it's very individual. As a business coach, we want to help people look at all of those things, but we also want to make sure that, whatever it is that makes sense, we're really, you talked about in the beginning about dreaming those big dreams, right? Changing your lifestyle like that is a big dream.
Mhm.
And we have to, having that dream is great, but if you don't set tactical goals toward it, that dream really is a fantasy,
Mhm.
right? We need to look at, okay, this is what I want. How am I going to get there? How am I
Uh-huh.
going to do that?
Right.
And taking it piece by piece, and it may or may not take as long as you think it might take, because if you haven't put that in place, you have no idea how long it might take.
Right.
Until you really
Yeah.
look at the details and the structure around it. Structure
Right.
is your friend. Like, that's something that was not in my life prior to coaching. The idea of embracing structure and I mean, I guess it's not true because I was a space planner. So I guess I liked structure in a lot of ways, but I didn't like it personally until I realized that by putting parameters and boundaries around those steps, I was
Mhm.
way more likely to get them, as
Yes.
opposed to just floating along and hoping
Right.
and pushing
Right.
instead of working smart.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I really like about your coaching. Now
Mhm.
you offer, and just so somebody would know, they can go to your website. What is your
Yep.
website?
Actually, so it's tracieroot.com. And what I want to suggest is that people go to the tracieroot.com/links,
Yes.
because it's the best place to kind of find all of the things.
Uh-huh.
I do have a couple of free things there for people to grab. One is about upgrading your habits,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's personal, professional, health, whatever.
Yeah.
And one is about building community, which is my other,
Ah,
huge
cool.
passion. So there's
Yes.
two freebies there. And of course, there's links to the workshops and things that I'm doing. But, it's the thing about my kind of strategy with coaching is,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about, what do you want? And really why, right? Like, what's the reason for
Yeah.
that? It's really important for everyone who has a dream or a goal that is more like a dream, to really understand what it is about that is driving them.
Yes.
For me, leaving corporate and becoming a full-time coach, quote full-time, because it varies between 20 and 80 hours a week, right?
Right.
Anywhere in between, but hopefully closer to the 20. But to really understand why it's important, that is what fuels you to keep going when you want to give up, or when you don't know what to do next, or
Yes.
when you just are tired, right? And with the pandemic, again, that's something that is super common. It's like, you have this idea, but maybe you don't know what to do. You don't know where to find help. You don't know where to learn what you need to learn. And you don't have someone reminding you why you started.
Right.
I even have a sign here in my office right there. Remember why you started. Because when we can remember what's important to us in our life, like the base reason, when I started coaching and the reason to move to Florida was to have a completely different life with my kids.
Yes.
Right. To be able to say that I was there, that I was able to be in the classroom, that I was able to be there when they came home, and not every single day, but be there when they came home from school to give them a snack and say, how was your day? Tell me about what you did with your friends, right? And help them to build relationships and believe in their growth mindset and their future. Where, you know, if I was sending them to daycare after school every day for all of their formative years, that wouldn't have happened. And, you know, I'm super grateful for what we were able to create together. They're amazing.
Yeah.
And they're teenagers.
How old were they when you went to Florida?
My son was in first grade. My older was in first grade, and my younger was still in preschool. So, and so she was only 2.5, 3. She had just turned, was just turning 3, I think, when we left. So she was little. She was 3. And my son was in first grade. So, which was very interesting to experience, you know, elementary schools in Florida versus California. That's a whole other story. But then we moved right back, right? We left at like Christmas vacation. We took those 2 weeks and that break of school to do our move, so that when Christian would start school again in Florida, it was, you know, everyone was coming back from Christmas break. And that's a pretty typical, and there's a lot of military in that area. So it was pretty typical. He was not the only new kid on the block at that time. But when we came back to California, but he still had a pretty rough time that year. And part of it was just that he was in first grade. Part of it was that he's super, super smart. And like, that's a challenge when you're young to fit in.
Yes.
And of course, you know, life is
getting used to a new family.
And right. He's still, you know, processing the fact that it was just the 3 of us, to the extent that he could process it at 6 years old. And, but when we moved back to California and decided to move back to California, we moved really fast. We got engaged, I think it was July 1st. And we were here by August 10th because I didn't want them to split their school year again.
Yes.
I specifically didn't want him to split his school year again. She was still in preschool. And a lot more like me, super personable and all of that. Gonna make friends no matter where, every second of every day. But my son was, you know, he really needed that structure. And he still has friends that he made that first year when we moved back. It's so great. And now he's a sophomore, and my younger kid is in 7th grade. And
teenage years. Love them, love them, love them.
Yep.
They could drive you over the edge. And
they're great though. They really don't drive me over the edge. Like, they're fantastic. I love them to death. I really don't struggle with the things that the teenage drama doesn't bug me, because I know, as coach, right? I know that it's part of the process, right? It's so helped my parenting to be able to understand people, and the fact that the best thing that I can do for them is allow them to learn for themselves.
Yeah. So what is the most important thing to you in your coaching? Because you coach, we'll talked a little bit about grief. Do you coach in grief? Or I
don't really coach in grief.
Okay.
Per se, right? I'm not trained as a grief counselor or any of those things. And again, when I was back in the thick of it, I didn't even go to like counseling grief groups or anything. Like, I didn't do any of that because I didn't personally understand how it was going to be valuable to me. Now, knowing what I know now, gosh, I wish I would have, right? I really do. I wish I would have gotten some more personal help around what I was going through, but I didn't know how. And so
I think there are, personally, I think there are grief groups, and then there are grief groups. And so that I don't think they're all of the mind of them. What we have learned about grief over the last few years through people experiencing it and writing these fabulous books and coaching on it is the programs that were written years ago are more structured, where I believe the value of finding the pain, there's a gift. And the gift is forgiveness, it's for development, it's for a lot of things. So I think it's really important when someone does choose grief coaching, that they be very selective
Yeah.
as to where they go. Yeah.
I think that, when I say that I wish that I would have gone, I think what I am saying that I would have been looking for was someone to talk to who understood, right? What I
Yes,
did instead was
definitely.
I went to social media because that's what I do in my life. And, and I found some groups, and some were supportive and some
Oh, that's
didn't fit
good.
for me. And
Yeah.
that's normal and totally expected, right?
Yeah.
But I think that knowing what I know now, had I like gone and considered and looked into the group that was maybe at my church at the time, or I don't even know where, right? Because I never
Yes.
looked into it.
Well,
But if
they're
I had
always
looked
at
into
the
something in
church.
person, I know now way more than I knew then, the value of connecting to people.
Yes.
I was very, we always said it was him and me against the world, right? And then he was gone, and now it's just me. So I got to figure it out, right? And that's basically what I did. Is it was me. And I know now that there's so much value in sharing that experience with other people who also can understand, even if they can't help. At least you're not alone, right?
Yeah.
And that's really what coaching is, period. That, the women that I'm coaching now, they may have things that have happened in their life that manifest in a grief experience, but really what we're talking about, because coaching is not therapy, right? I'm not getting to the bottom of why they're experiencing things in a certain way. I'm trying to help them to move forward,
right,
and not discount that it happened, but to understand what you can do next.
right.
And so whether, I'm looking to help someone with, whatever it is that their big dream is, if they can set a goal in that direction, I can help them.
Yeah. So where is most of your coaching? Is it in the health or the entrepreneur world?
Most of the people that I'm working, most of the people I'm working with these days are like emerging entrepreneurs, kind of getting started maybe on that side thing, or imagining, what things might look like if they leave their corporate job and retire and do something different. But also, you can't separate health from all the other things. Right. So, the things that you need to do in order to be your best self for your business or for your family include living in a healthy lifestyle, which I'm not going to dictate what that means, other than get some good sleep, drink water, treat your body and yourself like someone that you care about.
Right.
And that's kind of the baseline of health coaching anyway, is don't forget to put yourself on the list of things to take care of. And in fact, put yourself at the top.
Yeah.
Because if you can take care of yourself, then you are your best self to be able to take care of everyone else. And most of the people who come to me from a health coaching standpoint, or in the past, that's the binding similarity, is that they take care of everyone else, but not themselves.
Right.
And shifting that feeds not only your health, but your whole life. And that might include making changes in your livelihood.
Yeah. Well, you even wrote a book about that. So tell us about your book.
Yeah. So I was part of an amazing book called Empowered Self-Care. And in fact, I don't have the book right here, but I have the journal right here. It looks like this. Lovely little heart. This was so great because there are 25 authors in this book. And we all got to choose to share a story and tips and perspective based on our personal experience, or what we teach, or how we work. So there's energy healers in there, and there's people who've been working in varying modalities of health and well-being for decades. And also you have people like myself who have stories around like that awakening of understanding that if you take care of yourself, then everyone around you wins. It's not
Yeah.
just you. So yeah, my chapter includes some tips that are like, if you can upgrade these little 5 things in your life, and I already mentioned, like, get some better sleep, drink some more water, like basic nurturing practices, breathing, those basic nurturing practices, that you can show up better in your day if you do that better for yourself in the morning.
Right.
And yeah, and there's 25 authors in there, and it's really great. And that actually, I was just going to say that that has a link on my links page too, but you know what? It doesn't. I need to add that, or maybe it does. I don't know. I'll make sure it's there.
Well, where do we go to find it?
Yeah, you can find it. You'll be able to find it on my links page, the one that I mentioned earlier, tracieroot.com/links. And it may or may, like I said, it may or may not be there right this second, but I'm going to make sure it gets added immediately so that it's there by the time this airs.
Good. But so it's not on the book sites. It's not on Amazon.
You can find it on Amazon. If you buy it from me, I'll send you a signed copy, but you can also find it on Amazon.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Cool. Well, the thing I like about it is it's got the workbook. I think that's a handy tool.
Yeah, the journal is, it's less of a workbook and more of it's blank, but it also has like reminders of some of the impactful quotes and phrases from the different authors throughout it. So, you know, I love a good journal. There's so much benefit, and there's a lot of science behind writing the things down that you want to remember and that you are striving to improve. Right. So we talked about goal setting and goal getting, right? The idea of writing down those goals and writing down the actions that take you there and doing that like every day. If you put that into practice, that like you can't but succeed when you think about and act every single day.
Yeah. Good.
And the same thing goes with your self-care. If you're thinking about how do I want to show up today? What am I going to do that's good for myself today? If you think about that every day, like you can't help but be improved and feel better and be uplifted and thrive more.
Right. Yeah. I used the journaling really for me processing the grief. And I was surprised. I mean, I never thought of myself as a writer. But even though I have 2 books out, but I never thought of myself as a writer. I never started that under. And so I was amazed at the way the pain came out. The things I remembered came out that just needed to come out.
Yeah.
You know, we just carry so much baggage. So
yeah, I definitely did. I did a lot of journaling back then. But I didn't have a practice. I just like, it was sporadic. Right. So now to go back to that book and like read what I had written. Wow. That's really crazy. But what's great is, what I can say is that with the pandemic, I started an every night journal, and it just kind of happened. But every night before I go to bed, I write in my journal that's on my bedside. And sometimes,
what do you write about?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Sometimes what I write is, I don't feel like I did very much today. Right. Like, so sometimes it's that negative self-talk of, I didn't get anything done. Right. And it's icky, but then I recognize that kind of maybe turned into that direction, and I need to get out of it if I'm going to be happy. So then it changes. And so now I'm very focused every night on talking to myself about what went well, what I'm looking forward to, maybe, the next day, so I can put, some thoughts about what's coming up into my subconscious while I sleep. But really trying to keep it not fake positive, but positive, because ending my day with what I didn't do isn't serving me. Right. It's all about remembering that whatever you put into your mind and take from your mind to your pen, to your paper, and then you're reading it, like all of those sensory connections really affects you. And the only way to keep it going on a positive note is to focus on that and try
Right.
to, even if I start with the negative, I'll say, okay, and now what am I going to do about that? And make sure that I add that in at the end of it.
Yeah.
Because to just say, today was bad, I suck, blah, 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 and close the book, like
Yeah.
that's not going to turn out well at all. You
Yeah.
got to shift it around so that you can go to sleep and have some peace while you're
Uh,
sleeping and start the next day.
Yeah, I always think of the night journal as the process of listing a few gratitudes.
Mm-hmm.
I studied with Jack Canfield for many years in my beginning journey. And so that was always his big deal to do
Yes.
the gratitude. So I'm sure you do those.
Right.
Is that
Right.
also part of that page, that writing?
Yeah, as much as I can, and some days it's hard to think of things, and I really try to make sure that I'm not writing things just to write them, that I really want it
Yes.
to be very authentic and true.
Yes.
And it is true that I'm grateful for the house that I'm living in, and for the fact that I have clean water, and that we have the income that we need to live this life, and all of those things. But at the same time, I'm also grateful for the crazy experiences that I've had that are going to help me learn something new, that, and that's this last year and a half, right? I talk all the time about how this pandemic for me has been such a gift, because the ability to take this super negative, traumatic, horrible thing for a lot of people, and to imagine what's possible anyway. Like that's
true.
That's a gift. Huge.
It's gotten us out of our routine.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing, because, we've had to think. I mean, staying in your house was just a routine we weren't used to.
Yep.
And it really has made all of us, every one of us, have been forced to get uncomfortable. So, yeah, I guess there is a good side to something pretty crummy.
In fact, so you mentioned the Empowered Self-Care book. I'm actually part of another book that's coming out at the end of this year called The Art of Leadership, which has been a really nice transition to move from empowered self-care to leadership. Yes. And my friend Seema, who's the compiler for that book, is doing another book next year that's called, I'm going to mess it up. It's basically The Brighter Side of the Pandemic. I can't remember if that's the exact right words.
That'll be good too.
Yeah, it's going to be really great. She's searching for authors now, and I was just telling her, everyone has something to say about that, because there's got to be something for everyone.
Yeah.
And sure. So yeah, I'm really excited.
Will you be in that book as well?
I haven't yet pulled the trigger on the brighter side of the pandemic yet. After this one coming out at the end of this year, I'm not certain I'm going to do another one next year, another compilation book, right? Maybe I'll start working on my own.
Yes, that's good. I like that idea. Yeah. Yes, I do.
We shall see.
Yes. You'd have to put that on your plans, though.
I would have to put it on my plans. And that's the thing, is like, is it in my dream and my plans? It's not really there right now. So I don't know if this is the right time. And in fact, I'll share that one of the reasons why that's not in my mind and in my heart right now is the fact that my parents from Florida are moving here to California, and they'll be here in a few weeks. So nice. So that's kind of the biggest thing that's in my mind right now, outside of the current structure of the business, right? So to add in like writing a book right now, all I can think about is them moving here and getting them settled. And
I think your platter's full.
Yeah, it is. And 2 teenagers.
Yes, I think so. Yeah. Well,
but it'll be somewhere in the future.
I know. It must be
somewhere.
You have so many things. I think it'd be great, Tracie. Yeah. You'll come back and tell me about it, won't you?
I will. We are like this now. We're connected.
Good. All right. We're getting close to the end of our show. And I always hate to share that with somebody, because I so enjoyed you today.
Thank
you.
Was
great.
Likewise.
Our conversation was awesome. But I do have a couple questions that I like to ask my guests. And the one that I really kind of would like is there a pitfall that you experienced that you would like someone to be aware of on the journey to recovery?
I think it really just goes back to allow yourself to ask for help. Allow yourself to connect to people who love you the or who have the ability to support you, whether it's because you have a personal relationship with them or because they have an experience that they can share that then brings value to your experience and can allow you to work through that. When right after Paul died, probably within a couple of weeks or so, there was a gal at my church who came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm starting a catering company. And I was wondering if I could ask for your help because I'm making all this food and I don't have anything to do with it. And I would love, to offer it to you and your kids." And in my mind, it's a pity. She wants to give me food and I know that's a thing, but I'm fine. So I told her no. And here we are 11 years later, and I'm still telling this story because I did not know how to accept that help and allow myself to just say, sure, I'd love for you to share that food with me so that I don't have to cook a meal, right? I just wanted to be so in control of the situation and not look weak. Right. So and that's something that is like, it's a regret of my life. It's one of my, few regrets of my life that I don't know if she still really had a catering company or not. She might have just seen right through me and thought maybe this was a way to get to me. But what I know is that I would have been well served to say yes.
Yeah. Well,
and I didn't know how.
There's the lesson.
I know, it's a huge lesson.
Right.
It's here great. I am 11 years later telling the story because I didn't know how. And so now that I know that, what connecting with other people and allowing yourself to accept help. It's hugely important. So do that.
That's a good one. Now what, this one's a little more exciting, I think. It's happier, let's say.
Okay.
What was the greatest thing about your success?
About my success? The community
where you are a success.
The community I've gotten to build. So when you mentioned Gather and the Gather community, Gather actually started as an event space. We opened in October of 2019. Mm-hmm. And 5 months later, we had to close the doors. And we haven't really been open since. But what I was able to do was to say, you know what? I have this vision of people being in community with each other. And I thought it needed to be in person. And when all we were able to do is connect online, I moved all of my energy to helping people build their online work, promote their online workshops, events, things that would have been held in my room. I helped them to bring them online and helped them to gain more visibility, to find new clients, all of that. That was the huge gift of the pandemic for me, was this business that I thought was a room in a town turned into a community in the world. We've had international presence at our online events that we have a couple of times a year. It's, hundreds of people signed up and attend. It's been amazing. And so that's probably, from a business standpoint, the biggest success that I've ever had, is to take my mission of helping entrepreneurs, my mission of building community, and allow that to grow into something that I never expected to create and never thought it would be as great as it is. And that's thankful to the pandemic situation.
So how you're using that is that if somebody has a workshop or an event that they want to have share, they come to you, they make the arrangements.
So what we used, I'll lay it out here really easily. What we used to do when it was just in a room, right, was they would pay me to rent the room, and I would use what I had at my disposal to help support getting the word out about that things are happening in the room, right? Hey, this person's having a money mindset workshop, and it's going to be here at Gather at this time on this day. And I'd send that to, we'd put it on our website, on our newsletters, on our calendar, on our website, on social media. I also would leverage, local websites and newspapers and stuff here in town.
Right.
So when we had to close the room, I went, the people who were doing things in the room, if I don't help them move things online, they're not going to be around when the room gets back open, which we thought was going to be a couple months later, of course.
Yes.
Right. So I said, instead of them renting the room and me doing that support for them, I'm going to start a membership. Yes. And so I created a membership called the Gather Community.
Yes.
Our members are called the creators or the contributors, and depending on which level they signed up for and bought into, they get different levels of promotion and support and visibility. So for the creators, we promote unlimited events that they have going on online or in person, if they have in-person things, which no one really has, but I would do that too. And, but we also give them additional visibility. We do interviews. They have a landing page on our website. It's a twice monthly newsletter that goes out, all those things, right, to just get them in front of people that maybe they never met before.
Yeah. What is your email? What is your email list or your contact points, numbers?
We've got around 800. We've got around 800 on our list. And for Gather itself, and of course, social media has a much larger reach.
Yeah.
I leverage my personal social media that I've created over the course of all of my coaching career, which is 4,500 friends and, blah, 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 awesome, followers and all of that stuff. So, really leveraging everything that I would do for myself, and I put it in place for everyone around me, and they're connected to each other. So in addition to Gather as a company promoting them, they also get to promote each other because they're a community.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ladies, know each other from other places, and we have get-togethers every month on Zoom, and everyone gets to, support and encourage each other and learn about each other. We also do 2 significant events. As of now, we do 2 a year. That may increase next year.
Tracie, I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
I really do.
Thank you. It's really great. It's been fabulous. And like I said, when the pandemic hit, we had to figure out how to keep moving forward. And it was a giant gift.
What a great service.
Yeah,
really.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Big applause, big applause, big applause. So anyway, thank you.
And you can find information about all that on my links page too.
Links page. I have to go to links. You are maybe the 3rd person that's suggested this links thing. So I have to get cracking here.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people use something called Linktree, but that's not what mine is. Mine is just a page on my website that has all of my links. So it's similar to that, but it's my own page. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you. What a short hour. This was too short.
I know.
But anyway, it was great fun. And I appreciate that you were here today. So thank you for
it's my pleasure.
Coming to Second Wind.
Yeah.
So all those, for my listener out there, you have been given a lot of great information. Going to her group. What's the group thing called? It's called
To Gather in Santa Cruz.
The Gather.
The Gather Community.
The Gather Community. Mm-hmm. That's a wonderful resource for you to go to and maybe take action on it.
Yeah.
But there is so much good information. I really encourage you to go to Tracie's website. Look at what she offers so that you can possibly become part of her community in some way. She's got some great support for you wanting to build an entrepreneur occupation.
Lifestyle.
You need that training, that support that she offers, because one, she's been through it and she knows what she's talking about. And it's just a must to succeed in the entrepreneurship world. So anyway, I thank you. And I look forward to you being with us next week. Make this week count. Go out, help somebody, say hi to somebody, just be present with someone. So thank you. Have a great week.
Joyce Buford returns next week at the same time for another edition of Second Wind. Through the Joyce Buford Empowerment System, women are receiving the support they need through their transitions and are able to reclaim their true purpose with confidence. They receive the tools they need to map out new lives. You can find out more about her coaching services at joycebufordempowers.com.